So this was a bit of a discovery, wasn't it, up in the loft?
Yes, it was.
Growing up, I knew very little about the Korean War, and next to nothing about my own dad's involvement. The discovery of a trunk in the attic with his uniform and photographs sparked conversation.
Oh, Dad, you've got a couple of really old cigarettes. Players medium navy cut.
That's what people used to have in those days.
My dad served with the Royal Ulster Rifles. It was part of his national service in 1952. His generation grew up in the shadows of their older brothers and fathers, men who had fought in the Second World War. He was not content to serve his time as a young officer out of harm's way. When the opportunity came, he sailed to Korea and joined the Royal Norfolks near the 38th parallel.
Why is anyone, a young man, basically, you've been there, you got there, you got that close and you didn't actually see any of the action, didn't get anything going on? No, that was absolutely, you wanted to go to get the most out of it.
The Korean peninsula is now divided by the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, that was established 64 years ago at the end of the war. Officially, the war has never ended, only halted by an armistice. My dad, Ben, is now not physically able to travel, but 66 years later, I was given the opportunity to follow in my father's footsteps. Every year, the South Korean government funds and organises veterans to return to the peninsula where they once served. It's part of the country's unique way of honouring those that fought for it. I was joining 40 veterans and their families from around the Commonwealth who are making the journey across thousands of miles. The youngest of the 40 was 82, the oldest in his early 90s. 16 were from the UK. Seoul has risen from the ashes of the war to become one of the world's megacities. From the moment they stepped foot off the plane, the veterans were treated like royalty. A whirlwind 4 days in the country began with a ceremony to commemorate the Battle of Gapyeong, an early chance for the veterans to dust off their medals and practice their marching skills. Here, in April 1951, Commonwealth troops managed to hold off the Chinese advance. That effort prevented the capture of Seoul. The Korean War was the first fought by the United Nations. 21 countries took part, 16 in the combat. It proved the biggest test of the UN since its inception in 1945.
It wasn't just an effort on the part of the Commonwealth, of course. It was the first United Nations action against aggression. And as we turn to face the new threats in the days and months and years ahead, we'll remember the supreme sacrifice made here in pursuit of freedom.
For troops at a nearby Republic of Korea armed forces base, the new threats aren't so very different to the old. A display by the Taekwondo team wasn't subtle about the ongoing tensions between the North and South. No prizes for guessing who won. Every detail of the trip had been carefully thought through. Specially assigned helpers were constantly on hand to aid the veterans. Back in the capital, there was a visit to Seoul's National Cemetery. It may be called the Forgotten War in the West, but here in Korea, remembrance is a part of everyday life. At a traditional incense offering, 3 handfuls of incense are scattered into a burning urn to remember the lives lost. South Korea is committed to honouring its veterans. Without their help, the country would never have transformed itself from major aid receiver to major aid donor in just 1 generation.
Many Korean people believe that this Korean War veteran program is very important. So I really feel that whenever I go to the market or goes around with the veterans, whenever they see the signboard of the Korean War veterans, they really want to say thanks, and then they give the big hand to those people also.
The trip moved on to the southern city of Busan. It is South Korea's commercial and industrial hub. It was the place where many UN troops arrived and where those who died are buried. The United Nations Memorial Cemetery is the only UN cemetery in the world. 886 British soldiers are buried here. Under the steady rain, it was a chance to remember those who had not returned home. Roses were laid at the British Lion and at individual plaques. For Philip, the biggest surprise was that, unbeknown to him, someone had been maintaining his friend's grave.
Well, Sergeant West was REME, Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. He supported one of the units in the UK contingent with vehicle repair, maintenance, and this is where he ends up. But his plaque has been cleaned by somebody generous or one of his relations. But well done, Sergeant West.
I don't come back out here for a holiday. I come back out here to honour the dead, and that's it basically in a nutshell. So you know, it's who on holiday you want to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and bed at 12 o'clock at night, sort of thing. But as I say, it's something you can't say you really enjoy coming out here, but you're glad you've been, and that's the guts of it, basically, like, you know.
For the final day of the trip, we travelled north of Seoul to Gloucester Hill. It is close to the current-day demilitarised zone. The Battle of the Imjin River remains the bloodiest battle fought by British troops since World War II. About 400 glorious Gloucesters held out against 10,000 Chinese troops for 3 nights, following the order to hold the line. Had the Chinese broken through at the onset, they would likely have taken Seoul.
Right wheel!
Every year, veterans return for a special ceremony commemorating the battle.
It's going better and better and better, and everything is improving. Because when we left, there was nothing here at all. It's marvellous to be back. It also brings back memories of those that didn't come back. So we'd all do it all over again. I'm sure if you asked any of these chaps, they'd all come again, even now at our age.
We were given special permission to visit a restricted military site close to the DMZ. Filming was restricted at what still feels like a front line. Where the trees stop, no man's land begins. For the veterans, the landscape was all too familiar.
That was Hill 355, which was the main feature on the Commonwealth Division front line. It was called Little Gibraltar, actually, and for a good deal of the time was manned by the Australians. And there were quite a few battles for that, as it was the commanding feature of our line. Yeah.
One last photograph, and the veterans who had travelled were ready to return home. For me, it was a chance to start another conversation.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It was just a few miles from here that my dad was based, on the banks of the Imjin River.
It's been fought over for quite a long time, this particular part of the line, and it was very heavily mined, landmines. It blows you up and blows your foot off. So there was a lot of those, which one did one's best to avoid, but it was just luck if you get it. You knew the Chinese were looking at you, you see. So you try to keep your head down, sort of thing. And which you quickly learnt when you...
So when I was young, obviously kind of growing up, was always very aware that you had the scar on your back. And I think I probably did know that you had been shot, but I'm just... What actually happened?
All I remember was bang. And I could see you could turn, it was all pitch black in the middle of the night. And you could see the flame coming out of the rifle after it shot the bullet. And then you realise your eyes on my back and breathing through my back. There I was lying when I came to, absolutely naked. And they had all the lady nurses there too, and I felt a bit embarrassed quite. Swing the lamp, that was what it was. So if anybody used to talk about their national service and then start to sort of waver on about what they did and this, that and the other, people would just go up and just push the light a little bit, and the light would go like that. And you knew what they meant. Stop, get off it. We've all done that. Been there, done that, yeah.